Hi everyone, welcome to the channel, The College Process. Once again, I'm Ed from Principia Prep, and today we're going to be going over creating your FSA IDs for both the student and the parent. Now, before we start, you're going to need a few things with you before we start creating the IDs. And by the way, you guys are going to need two IDs, as I mentioned before, one for the student and one for the parent. Now, this is irrelevant whether the parents are married, divorced, separated, widowed, remarried, etc. This is all basically the same thing. When it comes to filling out the financial aid forms, specifically the FAFSA, you need two IDs, one for the student and one for the parent. Now I'm going to walk you guys through the website here to create the ID for either the student or the parent. By the way, you can start with either one. Doesn't matter which one you start with. This site here where we're creating the FSA ID, StudentAid.gov, it does not recognize if you're a student or a parent, vice versa. It doesn't recognize any of those things. It just recognizes somebody trying to create an account. Now, before we begin, you are going to need a few things with you. You're going to need the first name, last name, social, birthday, email, and cell phone number for both the student and the parent. Now, that being said, we're going to start here on studentaid.gov. As you can see, I put the link down below here as well. This is the website you go to create both the student and parent IDs to start the FAFSA form. Now, if you're new to this whole process, without the IDs, you can't do the FAFSA form. So you need both a student and parent ID to start the FAFSA form. That being said, let's jump right into creating the IDs for you guys. First, we need to go to up here. You can click on either one of these two buttons, to be honest with you, because they technically take you to the same place. But let's click on create an account first. And then the next site's going to show us where we need to start the process. And then here you can see at the top, we have 7 different steps we need to take to be able to create the account for either the student or parent. Once again, it doesn't matter who you start with. So we're going to go down and fill in the information here. As I'm filling it out, you guys can also fill it out as well. These are the 4 things we need to do to basically start off the form. So double check your information, and if it's right, then click on the continue button like I'm going to do right now. And then the next screen, what you're going to see is going to ask you to create a username and password. Now, you can use whatever you want for the username as long as it's available. Now, sometimes you'll notice you try to do something fairly simple or usually common, I guess, place out there, you'll notice it might not be available. Let me give you an example. As you can see here, I typed in Smith 1980. This is probably something that's very common for somebody to put in, so it's not available. So you have to make sure whatever information, whatever username you use is available. Typically, I tell people just use the beginning part of your email, whether it's Gmail, Yahoo, MSN.com email, etc. Usually just use the beginning part of that email as your username. Use that is available to you. And you can see here, I found one that's available. I used Ed College 1988 as my username. Obviously, all the stuff you're doing now, the username, the password, everything else, make sure to write it down somewhere. Take a picture with your phone so you have that information later on, just in case you don't remember it. So now I'm going to basically put in my personal email. Always use your personal email, by the way, whether you're doing this for the parent or the student. Never use a work email, never use a high school email. So if you're leaving from one job to another, or obviously you're graduating high school, you might have access to that email. So make sure to use a personal email when doing this, okay? I'm going to plug in my email and then plug in your password next. Now, when it comes to the password, don't try to be too complicated. Try to be as simple as possible, something you use often. I'm going to plug in my email as well as my password. I'm going to and then have you guys, as well as you're watching me, do the same thing as you're watching me do this. So now you can see here, I used something pretty simple. I used an email that I have access to all the time, as well as an easy password to remember going forward. Now, obviously, double check your information here. If everything looks good, and then click on the continue button. All right, now that we're on the next step, the third step here is going to ask you for your address and your cell phone number. These are key aspects as well. Once again, when you're doing this, do not mix up the cell phone numbers or the emails. Make sure to use the student's cell phone number and email. And when you're creating the parent's account, use their cell phone and their email. You'll understand later on why it gets more complicated if you mix and match the cell phones or emails. Always keep it to that person's information. It makes things a lot easier going forward. That being said, I'm going to plug in my address here, and I'm going to plug in my mobile number here. And they're going to send us codes, by the way, to both the cell phone number and the email at some point in time at the end of this. So you need to make sure the student or the parent, if you're going vice versa, back and forth, that these people are with you when you're creating this account. Because when they send the code to the cell phone in a few minutes, and when they send the code to the email in a few minutes, you need those within about 15 minutes to be able to activate your account. That being said, I'm going to plug in my address and my cell phone number. You should do the same as well now as I'm going through this process. All right, so now I've plugged in the address as well as the cell phone number. I'm going to click on the continue button. Just make sure, once again, the email and the cell phone number are this person's information. Now, the next section is really more about preference of how you want to do things as far as getting information from the U.S. Department of Education, i.e. the FAFSA people. Now, important information that you work with them to get stuff sent to you can either be sent to your email, which is obviously recommended, or personal mail. You can actually send it to your house, obviously, snail mail. I typically suggest, obviously, clicking on the email part of it here. The email is already checked off to begin with. Then if you go down here, any additional stuff that's popping up, any new news or advertising and things happening within the U.S. Department of Education or financial aid in general, if you want information about that, you can also say to them, send me an email or check here to send text message information. This is more optional. You don't really need this, but if you'd like to be kind of informed, obviously check off at least the email here, allowing them to send you information every so often when things pop up. And then down here is your language preference. And you can keep everything in English or you can go Spanish. It's up to you. I'll keep everything in English here and move on to the next page and click continue. And then we've gotten to the fifth section, which is the challenge question section. They're going to ask you 4 challenge questions here and make sure to give them easy answers, typically one-word answers, by the way. The challenge questions are essentially utilized if you guys forget your password. You need to log in, you can't remember your password, and you don't have access to your cell phone number or your email. They'll ask you challenge questions to see if you are who you are to be able to reset your password, essentially. Now, these challenge questions, make sure whatever question you choose, because up here you choose which questions you want to utilize, right here in the pull-down menu. Whatever question you choose, make sure, once again, it's one-word answers to make it simple so that way you guys remember. Now, I'm going to answer all 4 of these questions here. You guys should do the same on your side. All right, so I've answered my 4 challenge questions, and I made sure to write down, and you should also make sure to write down your challenge questions and your answers, obviously on the same piece of paper on your cell phone, wherever you put your username and password, that way you have everything in there together. Now we're going to click the continue button. All right, the next page you're going to see here is essentially going to ask me to just verify all my information. So basically every section I did before, it wants me to make sure the questions and everything I've answered are correct. So what you'll do is go through this entire section here, all the way basically to the end, all the way down here. And then you're going to go, and then obviously you're going to go through the whole thing and get all the way to the bottom, as I have here, make sure all my information is correct. And if everything looks right to you, obviously click on the I agree to the FSA terms and conditions, click continue. And now we're essentially at the last step. What I mentioned to you guys before, a few steps before, is that you have to make sure the person is with you if you're doing this for the student or if the parent's doing this. So you got to make sure that obviously the student is with you if you're the parent doing this, or if you're the student doing this for the parent, that they're with you, or at least they're available by phone so you can get this information. Because the way to verify your account, make sure basically it's created in the final step, is you must do these 2 steps right here by verifying the cell phone number and also verifying the email. So I'm going to click on first verify the cell phone number. So first I'm going to click on verify the cell phone number. This is now going to send a code to that cell phone. That cell phone code I need to plug in here within about 15 minutes. So you need the person there with you to do this, basically. All right. And then after you get the code, obviously plug it in here. And then once you plug in the code, we're going to click on the continue button. Now that you see here it's been verified, that means this is good for this account. Now we need to do the second step, which is verify the email. So I'm going to click on verify here. And now go check your email. And by the way, if it takes a minute or two, don't worry. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5 minutes for this to happen. The email is always a lot slower than the cell phone number. Now that I've gotten that code from the email and I plugged it in here, I'm going to press continue. All right, now as you can see here, both accounts have been verified. The entire account is good to go. All I have to do now is click the continue button down here. I'll click on the continue button. And now the next step here is make sure to take a picture of this code right here. This is very important just in case you don't have a cell phone, your email. Let's say you don't remember your security code questions, etc. and answers. This is what you need to utilize, the backup code. So this code down here, this one underneath this right here, the backup code is very important to either take a picture or write down because you will need this at some point in time if nothing else is working, by the way. So then I'll click yes, I've stored this, and I'll click continue. And then the last step here, you're going to see, obviously, after we click the last continue button, it's going to say your account has been created, everything is ready to go. So now you can essentially utilize your FAFSA ID and information to be able to start the FAFSA form. Now, once again, when you do start the FAFSA, make sure to start as the student and then invite the parent and didn't do the parent FAFSA. Because once again, if you're new to this, there are 2 different FAFSAs, a student FAFSA and a parent FAFSA. Now, if you need help in the process whatsoever, you can obviously reach out to me. I do help a lot of parents and students fill out the financial aid forms, as well as with the admissions process. So if you need help, very simple, on the screen is my contact information. You can just basically send me a text message. That's my cell phone number. Text message, by the way, is the fastest way to reach me. Or if you'd like, you can also send me an email. If you call, it does take a little bit longer to get a hold of me sometimes, but text message or email are the 2 fastest way to get a hold of me if you need any help in the college process whatsoever. And other than that, thank you obviously for watching today's video. If you guys have any questions, please make sure to reach out. Thank you so much.